everybody, welcome into the NESN studios. Michaela Vernava joined on the line by our sports analyst for OddsShark.com. His name is John Campbell. I prefer to call him Johnny OddsShark. Either way, John, what is going on?
Not too much. What's happening with you?
Well, here in New England, I would assume everyone is excited to see Tom Brady out on the practice fields at Gillette Stadium for Patriots mandatory minicamp and throwing passes here on the turf in New England as opposed to off a yacht in Monaco. He, of course, skipped all the voluntary OTAs. But since he's back, I want to talk to you about some futures odds. The Patriots 6-1 favorites to win the Super Bowl. I know it's looking way, way ahead, but what do you think about those odds?
Well, New England installed right where we're used to seeing them the past many seasons here. They're the favorites at 6-1, as you said. Eagles right behind, so not a big gap. They're 8-1, and then from there you get into double digits, and there's a big group around 10-1 to 15-1. So a little better odds than we saw last year, a little worse odds, I should say. 6-1, they were lower than that last year, but we have some teams that I think that are hot on their tail this year. I think it's going to be a much tougher competition, and we also see their season win totals a little lower this year.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. 11 for the over-under. I would definitely think that I'd feel comfortable taking the over on that, given what we usually see from them.
Well, a lot of people agree with you because the over is going to cost you a little bit more. If you want to go over 11 wins, that's going to be about minus 165. So the bettor is risking $165 to win 100 in that situation. Quite a bit different from what we saw last year. Last year's Patriots number was the highest we ever saw for an NFL season total win number at 12.5. So you needed a 13-win season last year to take the Patriots. Bettors always come in over on the Pats, but they're looking at a little better number than they saw last year.
And looking at Tom Brady specifically, an 8-1 favorite for MVP. What do you think about that line?
Well, Tom Brady, the favorite here, despite everything and all the talk in the offseason at the end of last year, he comes in installed as the favorite to win MVP. 8-1, not bad odds. This guy has proven that he's been pretty timeless well into the late stages of his career here. So he's the favorite for a reason. I think this is another year where he'll play with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder like we saw last year. I think he's going to have another great year. How can you bet against that?
I would agree with you there, John. And now let's take a look at what is going on currently, even though it's not in New England. We have Game 3, Cavs-Warriors coming up. What are those odds, and how are the overall odds for the series looking now that the Cavs are down 2 games, which not entirely unexpected that they lost out in Golden State?
Well, we're looking at a much lower point spread than we saw in games 1 and 2. The spread for game 3, Cleveland is now a 5-point underdog after opening as a 4.5-point home underdog. The total is 217 there. That's quite a bit lower than the 12-point spreads we saw in games 1 and 2 in this series. But I think the Cavs are going to come back here and have a great game in game 3. The odds are huge to overcome here. The Warriors are minus 2,200 favorites to win. So to win $100, you'd have to risk 2,200. Obviously, the huge favorites here. But if you like Cleveland's chances still, we've seen them come back before against Golden State in the finals. You're looking at between 10-1 and 15-1, depending where you look.
I mean, not for nothing, but I certainly didn't think that they were going to come back after the Celtics started their last series against them 2-0, and they sure did. So kind of never know with LeBron leading the charge over there.
Yeah, no kidding. He's averaging almost 40 points in the playoffs, just unbelievable, and you can't count him out. He's done it before.
And looking over at the Stanley Cup Final, man, how the tides have shifted for the Vegas Golden Knights, now on the brink of elimination. How are the odds for that series for them to be able to come back and actually win the cup at this point with the series at 3-1?
Well, the Golden Knights are about 5-1, 6-1 to come back and win the series. The Capitals are minus 800, so heavy favorites, but probably not as heavy favorites as they should be because the Golden Knights now need to set some history in a different way, not just as the first new franchise to win the Stanley Cup in their first year, but we've seen 31 straight teams go on to win the Cup who have had a 3-1 lead in the series final, in the Stanley Cup final here. So they've got to overcome a long streak. It's only happened once where a team came back from a 3-1 deficit. That was the 1942 Toronto Maple Leafs who beat the Detroit Red Wings. But there is some hope for the Golden Knights faithful out there because they are favored in Game 5 here. They're minus 135. Those are pretty good odds. Odds makers are saying they have a real good chance to win a game here.
And not for nothing, but they have been defying the odds their entire season. So there's always that.
Exactly. Yes, I know. They have overcome a lot this year. I wouldn't count them out. I think we'll see a real good game from them here back in Las Vegas. They'll have the comfort and that amazing atmosphere of home ice.
Absolutely. John, as always, thanks for the advice, and we'll check in with you next week.
Thanks, Michaela.